Okay, let's start our seminar. Good morning, selamat pagi, matur suwun. Wait, that's not matur suwun. Good morning all, selamat pagi semuanya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Nama Budaya, salam kebajikan buat untuk kita semua. Today we have a very special guest for our tourism talk. We have Dr. She's an expert in tourism development, as well as Mr. Nalendra from Wise Steps Consulting Group. She is also an expert in sustainable tourism. Our topic today is about engaging visitors toward more sustainable behavior. And the reason I chose this topic today because I thought it was really interesting how today's destination marketing now involves some part of social marketing. So what I mean by that, now destinations are implementing what we call tourism pledges in terms of how visitors who come to their destinations can shape their behavior or engage with the destination itself. So before that, I want to give you a bit of a video of how New Zealand implements their tourism pledge. Operator.
Ko rangi nui e tū iho nei.
Ranginui is our Sky Father.
Ko tāne mahuta, nāna te ngahiri.
Tāne Mahuta is our forest.
Ko Papatuanuku e takoto nei.
Papatuanuku is our Earth Mother.
Ko Tangaroa, nāna te moana, ki usa. Ko ngā awa me ngā roto.
Tangaroa is our ocean, our rivers, our lakes.
Ko Aotearoa, tō tātou ukai.
New Zealand is our home. It is precious. Everyone who lives and travels here has a responsibility to look after it.
Tiaki means to care for people and place. The Tiaki Promise is a commitment to care for New Zealand, for now and for future generations.
To care for land, sea and nature, treading lightly and leaving no trace.
To travel safely, showing care and consideration for all.
To respect culture, travelling with an open heart and mind.
While travelling in New Zealand, follow the Tiaki Promise. Act as a guardian.
Protect and preserve our home.
Help us care for New Zealand.
Okay, so our first speaker is Dr. Julia N. Albert, who joined the Department of Tourism in University of Otago in April 2015. She has an academic background in geography, landscape ecology, political studies, and tourism. She has published her work in leading academic journals such as Journal of Sustainable Tourism Management, Annals of Tourism Research, among others. She is also a co-editor of Journal of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism and served in the editorial board of Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research. In 2003, Julia was awarded OUSA Supervisor of the Year by University of Otago. She is also a sought-after PhD supervisor and supervising PhD research among her favorite aspects of her work. She is the course coordinator for Destination Management, Tourism Product Development, also teaches Introduction to Tourism. She served in the Otago Human Ethics Committee, in the Business School Research Committee, and in 2020, Dr. Julia won the Otago Business School Best Contribution to Research Environment Award. So please welcome Dr. Julia Albrecht. Welcome, Dr. Julia. Please share your presentation.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Dr. Reda. Can you see my screen? Is it being shared successfully?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, not only for your very kind introduction, but also for the invitation. I'm excited to be talking with you today. And I feel I don't have to introduce myself anymore at all. But I would like to take a moment to acknowledge my lovely colleague, Eliza Raymond, who was a co-researcher on the project that I am going to talk about today. And that is, as per the introduction, an overview of tourism pledges and how they have been developed and implemented in several destinations around the world, New Zealand as well as others. And with our interest, our shared interest in behavior change for better tourism, we are going to focus on those aspects where the pledges deliberately seek to positively change visitor behavior for more positive host community outcomes. And you're going to see that there is indeed a social marketing principle underlying this work. So over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to introduce some of the pledges that there are, and I'm going to restrict myself to national level visitor pledges only. So we're not looking at regional or lower level destination pledges in this particular talk. We're going to look at the intervention that they present for visitor management in those destinations. And I'm going to structure the presentation by motivation, strategies, and impact. So what motivated those destinations to do this in the first place? What strategies did they employ to make this a reality? And what kind of impacts we are seeing so far? So luckily, Dr. Reda has saved me some time by already showing that video of the New Zealand Te Aki Promise, because this is one of the pledges that we are going to look at. But we're also going to look at evidence from the Icelandic pledge, the Palau pledge, and Sustainable Finland as well. And if you look at the years at the bottom of this slide, you'll see that the release dates of those 4 pledges were actually fairly close together. So the Icelandic pledge started things off in mid-2017, but the others followed through fairly quickly. So either this is an idea perhaps whose time had come, or perhaps other destinations were quite inspired by what they saw in Iceland and hurried to quickly emulate some of those ideas and adapt them in their own destinations as well. And personally, I'm tempted to think it was the latter, really, because as you shall see as we go through, a lot of those pledge documents are comparable in terms of content and delivery. However, we shall also see that over time, those initiatives developed quite differently. So on the one side of the screen, you see the overview of the Icelandic pledge. And that one is probably one of the shortest ones, if not the shortest one in existence, because it really was initially this one page only. So people were asked to commit to behaving like a responsible tourist. And then the pledge outlines some of those behaviors associated with this. For example, when I explore new places, I will leave them as I found them. But what is interesting about this pledge already is that it's not only looking after the destination. There are elements where there's a focus on the visitors themselves too. So for example, item number 3, I will take photos to die for without dying for them. So trying to humorously convince people that they should really be looking after themselves as well. And same with the last item, I will be prepared for all weathers, possibilities, and adventures. Again, encouraging visitors to look after themselves as well. We see similar items in the screen. They try to mix it up a little bit by delivering pledge commitments in a rhyming form. May work for some markets. I'm not really sure if it works for all markets we can think of. This is an overview of some points pertaining to the Palau Pledge. Now, this is an interesting one in 2 ways. First, in the sense that it's a commitment to the children of Palau. So this was the first pledge that specifically stated the idea of looking after places, not for the moment, but for future generations. And if we look at some of the collateral and communication material pertaining to the Palau Pledge, we see children's stories featured. We see pictures and imagery of children or characters from children's books and so on. So in terms of content, it's similar to an extent. What is different is that the pledge addresses the children of Palau. In terms of logistics, however, it's vastly different. So the first 2 pledges required commitment on, for example, social media. With this one, the Palau Pledge, anyone traveling into Palau will present their passport, and they will have the pledge stamped into their passport, and they will sign it in the presence of an official. So this is quite different. The passport is probably the most official document that any of us possess, right? And suddenly we are putting down our name or signature, confirming that we are going to treat the destination responsibly. And one of the questions that comes up is, to what extent can this be turned into a legal document as well? So this clearly goes beyond some commitment that we see in those other pledges. The Tiaki Promise is an interesting one in that it's not tourism only. It broadened out very, very quickly to also seek commitment from host communities, from tourism businesses as well. So Tiaki Promise initially started out similarly to the Icelandic pledge, but now we have got involvement from 7 different public sector departments and groups. We've got commitment from Tourism Industry Aotearoa, which is the industry lobbying association. So they are on board with this as well. So now we've got a multi-strand initiative committed to delivering sustainable outcomes for visitor destinations. So the Tiaki Promise is now one strand of this multi-layered initiative. And just like with the others, we have commitment to the destination, but also looking after Indigenous culture, but also looking after the tourists themselves. So some years ago, my lovely colleague Eliza and I were quite intrigued by the extent to which such pledges might make a difference in the destination. And initially we thought we would spend 1.5 years working with the destination management stakeholders, and then working another 1.5 years with the demand side and looking at how visitors respond. By the time successfully completed the first part of the project, but we parked the second part of the project until international travel resumed. So we are planning to look into that supply side perspective, hopefully later this year. In the meantime, we worked with the destination managers. So we spoke with 19 individuals across 16 interviews. And as I was saying earlier, we were interested in what do destinations want to get out of this, and how do they think they are going to achieve this. So the motivations were, to an extent, unsurprising, I must say. We've had, before COVID, a situation where many destinations experienced sharp increases in visitor numbers in some destinations, to the extent that we would speak of over-tourism. So, for example, Iceland, the first country to ever release the pledge, was certainly subject to over-tourism, especially from European and North American countries. And this was definitely something that they said was a major motivation to release the Icelandic pledge. But in this quote here, you see we had similar situation from Palau, where of course visitor numbers are much lower, but we still have a situation where the ratio in numbers of visitors and residents wasn't particularly satisfactory. And it's, of course, as we know, not only visitor numbers, it's also visitor behavior as well. So depending again on which markets we are working with, we see different types of behaviors that destinations might find unacceptable. So we may have a small proportion of our large visitor numbers that create most impacts that are being perceived as undesirable. We have this added layer of challenge where there's cruise tourism, which is known for having little positive economic impact, but large numbers of visitors into small places. So we have different scenarios where the negative effects of high visitor numbers and undesirable visitor behavior can combine in the most unfortunate ways. In Palau, but also in New Zealand, we had situations where communities increasingly reported that they didn't want their destination resources to be depleted. Resources in the broadest possible sense. We are not necessarily talking about tangible resources only. We might be talking about cultural resources as well, about cultural heritage that is at the desire of visitors, portrayed in authentic ways. These were some of the resources that communities increasingly wanted to protect, where they said, no, if people come to New Zealand, we do not want to portray Maori culture in certain cliche ways. We want to portray contemporary Maori culture the way it is now. So resources in this sense takes a very, very broad perspective. And then, of course, there's the idea alluded to earlier, that increasingly people felt that they were looking after places for the benefit of future generations. So that came into it as well. So those were our three main driving motivations that we found across all 4 destination pledges and the destination management initiatives behind them. So one thing that we all found across all 4 is the idea that any initiative should be led by local values. And if we, again, take into consideration some of the collateral and information and communication material about the pledges, this becomes very, very clear. So using this example from the Finland pledge right here, they make a big deal out of wanting visitors to behave like Finns. So adopting some of those local values and translating those values into desirable behaviors as well. We find a similar approach with the Icelandic pledge, where they had these little videos trying to explain how locals did certain things, like, for example, use a sauna or walk on a track where there's vulnerable plant life, these sorts of things. And all these videos were done in an entertaining way. They weren't lectures. They didn't want to teach visitors. They wanted to draw them in and convey the value of the beliefs that they hold dear in order to make sure visitors would appreciate them and look after them as well. Sounds a lot easier than it actually was to implement. So across the Finland, Icelandic, and New Zealand pledge, our interview respondents talked about the challenges in consultation and collaboration that they were facing. And the reason for this was that in order to really implement these, they needed industry buy-in as well. Because visitors had booked airlines, hotels, restaurants, and so on. And they wanted all stakeholders in the supply chains and value chains for a visit to sing from the same song sheet, essentially, and to really have an aligned set of values. So, for example, to stick with the New Zealand case, we had stakeholders from transport, from infrastructure. Air New Zealand was involved. So there was really an effort to incorporate the whole supply chain of a visit to New Zealand where at all possible. And this is why consultation and collaboration emerged as a hugely important issue in our research. The other thing that's important to mention here is that the pledges, all of them, deliberately sought a different way of communicating. So we all remember from our own travels or from our work in consultancy or planning or strategy or management, we all remember how destinations have these codes of conduct or lists of desirable behaviors, right? And the pledges are a deliberate departure from that, because we know those codes of conduct only work in a very, very limited way. So the pledges were trying to draw people in. Think about that video that Dr. Reda has just shown you before we started with the talks. It was about drawing people in emotionally, making them care about the destination, because if you care about something, you look after it, right? That's one of the underlying ideas of the pledges. This is what values-led social marketing looks like in practice in tourism at the moment. And you don't want to tell people off. You want them to have a good time, right? The other major thing that is also new to the pledges is the idea that people make a public commitment. And that's a first in tourism in this sense. This is the other component that makes it social marketing, is the attempt to almost socially engineer a situation where people commit publicly to desirable behaviors. Now, on this, the little image above the quote, you see something from the Icelandic pledge. And that's a little station in Keflavik Airport near Reykjavik in Iceland, where if you fly into Iceland, you come across this, you're being given some information, and then there's a big button that you can push. And this pushing of the button seeks to symbolize your commitment to the Icelandic pledge. And then there's a little counter with a number going up, so you can see how your push of the button increased this number by 1. Why is this done? We know from research into sociology and sociology in public health that if people commit something to something publicly, they are much more likely to actually do this. So if people commit publicly to ceasing to smoke, healthy eating, less alcohol, you name it, more exercise, if they commit publicly, for example, by posting on social media, they are much more likely to follow through. And that's what's referred to as the commitment consistency principle. And that's part of the pledge, to use this commitment consistency principle, because people want to be seen to walk the talk. They don't want to be seen to deviate from things they said they would do and then didn't. So this is why the pledges use this public commitment in different forms. Which brings us to our next aspect of this short presentation, and that's the idea around impact. So far, what we could look into was the desired impact that destination managers had in mind, and the impact that was perceived by tourism businesses. So that's what we're going to spend our remaining few minutes on. So first of all, in terms of impact, destination managers were surprised as to how much media attention they got through the pledges. So first Iceland, but then the other ones as well. So the media was hugely surprised at destinations taking a positive, constructive approach to trying to manage visitor behavior. That was new, and that actually helped a lot in getting the message out there, but also in a positive way as well. So because it was positive messaging, because it wasn't about telling people off, people were quite positive about it. And in the case of Finland and Palau, our interviewees reported that it even worked as a marketing campaign, which wasn't planned for. That wasn't the point of it, but that's how it worked out. Why not? We also found that people reported an increase in awareness of the vulnerability, environmental and culturally, of certain destinations. But all of this came, of course, with a caveat, because we don't yet know to what extent the pledges have led to actual improvements in behavior. So watch this space. And we only have secondhand anecdotes in terms of the behavior change so far. So our respondents from Palau talked about how there were some improvements, but only in some markets. So this is not something we can take to the bank. This isn't a research finding. This is just anecdotal evidence that pledges may work under certain conditions in certain environments. But it's a start. Much more interesting is this point here. What impact did the pledges have on industry? And this is something that's really, really worth thinking about, because in an industry as fragmented as tourism and hospitality, in an industry that's so dependent on small and medium-sized businesses as tourism and hospitality, having this kind of reaction from industry is really, really worthwhile. So across all 4 destinations, we saw incredibly positive reactions from industry. And I'm going to tell you why. We have an industry that is reliant on positive interactions with visitors. But sometimes our tour guides or interpreters need to manage people, right? They need to tell people off. You can't do this, you can't do that. You need to behave in this certain way. And the pledges help with this. Instead of saying to visitors, look, I really can't have you touch this coral, for example, they can say, oh, look, have you seen this piece of information pertaining to our destination? It explains really well in a very positive way why we need to do this. So it enables the tour guide to speak with the visitor at a different level, not telling them what to do, not lecturing them, but taking them with them, looking at the information and saying, look, here's how we need to behave. And because it's phrased in a positive manner, this is so much easier. And across all destinations, people have reported that this makes uncomfortable conversations with visitors ever so much easier. So maybe this is one reason why we might see pledges implemented and applied in more destinations as well. We also had people report that the pledges offered a vision for businesses to align with, because obviously, yes, they do need to make money. They want to make money because that's why they're doing it. But It's also something that businesses would like to get behind. They would like to be in sustainable tourism, but not everyone has a background in tourism. Not everyone knows how. So the pledges and again, the information material that goes with them made it easier for tourism businesses to learn about how they can be more sustainable, how they can look after their places better, and how they can draw their visitors into that journey. So it was even seen as an opportunity for some businesses to educate themselves and take their visitors on their journey with them. And for those businesses that did this well, obviously, they used the pledge as a marketing opportunity. And why not? The marketing collateral is there. Why not allow businesses to make the most of it? I know New Zealand businesses certainly make that effort, that if they do engage in something as positive as those pledges, of course they talk about it. And why wouldn't they? Because ultimately, we saw that businesses saw it as a very valuable opportunity to come on board with something that is worth doing. And the pledges, therefore, worked very, very well for locals as well as for visitors, with the caveat that we need to look into the extent to which there really is this behavior change. I want to close with this idea from Michelle Holiday, who was quoted in a fairly recent publication saying that we really need to consider community well-being as an important deliverable from tourism. And I like how she said, why would you do it otherwise? Why would you have people over if what you are left with is a worse condition than when they first arrived? And I think this is a really important conversation to have, especially if we are looking at destinations with increasing visitor numbers. Seeing that this is a teaching situation as well, and some of you may already be students or take this to students to discuss further. On this last slide here, which I have also shared with Dr. Reda earlier, so here's all the information. I ask a few questions that maybe could be worthwhile to discuss with students as well. And in the meantime, I look forward to hearing from Mr. Nalendra as well, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Gialbrecht. Thank you for your insights on the tourism pledges. Now we are going to move to our second speaker. So the second speaker is Mr. Muhammad Nalendra. He is the co-founder of WiseStep Consulting Group. He earned a Master's of International and Sustainable Tourism Management from Monash University. He is also a GSTC trainer. He sits on the board of Bali Tourism Board as an advisor to the chairman, and he has 10 years marketing experience as well as a BNSP marketing assessor. So would you please give us a warm welcome to Mr. Nalendra. Mr. Nalendra, please share your presentation and you have the stage.
Thank you, Mr. Reda. Hi, everyone. And thank you, Mrs. Julia, for such a wonderful presentations. And can I share my screen first? Okay. You see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar, and thanks also to Mr. Reda and the invitations. Yeah, as Mr. Reda said that I really like traveling and then hiking and so mountain biking. And I have 12 years professional experience in consulting area. And this is a good opportunity for us to talk about sustainable tourism and what the updates from the governments and also from any other stakeholders, how we can support this amidst the climate change or triple planetary crisis. And before that, I'll explain, if you may heard about WiseStep. So we are the social business enterprise. We have our visions, use the power of responsible tourism to transform the industry and the travelers' mind and local livelihoods. And we are originally as travel agent and erected in 2017. And then we hit by pandemic. We had a zero travelers who came to Indonesia because of the border closure. And in 2020, we set up a new divisions called Wise Step Consulting, also Wise Steps Foundations, which is we have a ranging of services, start from the consulting services, and then also we work closely with the community in the village, and also with the governments and also international organizations. So we became a one-stop solution for sustainable tourism in Indonesia. So this is the highlights of what we did with the government, especially supporting in sustainable tourism policy. And one of the programs that we have already done with the ministry is the launch of the Responsible Tourism Campaign. We call it Kita Mulai Sekarang, or in English, We Start Now. And also we have a international version of the campaign we called Every Step Matters. So we just published last year in April 2023. So it's a beginning of the movement. And then also in the same year, we just launched the tourism sector decarbonization roadmap with alongside with UNDP and also with the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. So in these documents that we try to formulate on how we can support and reduce the emission 50% in 2030, and then reach net zero before 2050. So this is part of the commitment of the industry to support the Glasgow Declaration, which has already signed it with the minister. And also at the moment, we're working with the National Ministry of National Planning to outline the dimension and criteria and also indicator to implement the blue, green, and circular economy in the 4 subsector. Start from accommodation, and then with the transportation sector, and also the F&B and the attraction, tourism attraction. So by the end of the year, we have a guideline for private sector to how implement the part of sustainable tourism regarding the environmental sector. And this is our portfolio clients. We work with ADB, UNDP, Visa, and also with the governments, also private sector folks. And then I would like to emphasize, so these pictures explain our works on decarbonizations based on the timeline with related stakeholder, including Ministry of Tourism, National Planning, and also international agency to set up a robust policy and a program to help the industry achieve the climate target. So in this session, I'm going to talk about the program 3. It's a responsible tourism campaign, which is we have already launched last year. And my presentation should be start from the background, why we should or why we need responsible campaign, and also about the concept, why we choose the slogan Kita Mulai Sekarang, or Start Doing Now, and then how we can elevate the campaign to tap the market or tap the audience to be more responsible. And why we need the campaign in Indonesia, for sure, because as you know that tourism accounts for an estimated 8 until 11% to the global greenhouse gas. So this is quite sad. That's worse than construction. And then part of it, or it's contributed by the transportation. And this will get worse as the world becomes increasingly mobile. If annual tourist arrivals, domestic and international, almost double from 20 billion in 2016 to 37 billion by 2030. This is forecast by the UNFCCC. So that's why the industry, government, and so the community visitors themselves have a pivotal role to reduce the emission and take their part to support how we can fight the climate change. And in terms of the ways, so sometimes our trip to popular touristic areas might be causing more problems than we realize. So as there are multiple negative impacts tourism can have on the environment. So based on the research by UNEP in 2030, 8 of 10 tourists visiting coastal areas contribute to the global plastic pollution crisis. So this is also tourists produce twice as much waste as local residents. For example, in Bali, with 16 million tourists visit the place, generate 3.5 times more waste per day than residents, accounting for 13% of Bali total waste. And then the other side of the world, in Malta, tourists also generating a daily 1.25 kilogram of waste per person, while residents generate 0.68 kilogram, which is less than tourists. So this is sometimes become one of the problem in destination regarding waste. But however, we had good news from the research from the Booking.com Sustainable Tourism Travel Report, which is say that 74% they use 33,000 respondents from many countries, including Indonesia, believe people need to act now and make more sustainable choices to save the planet for the future generations. And also 80% confirm that traveling more sustainably is important to them. So the awareness is there, and how we can elevate this result of the research to be one of the foundation for our responsible tourism campaign. And in national scale, as we have dominated by the younger generation, Gen Z and millennials, which is born between 97 till 2012. So it is currently the biggest generation group in Indonesia. So that's why we try to tap or target the both younger generation, which is Gen Z are more vocal in demanding pro-climate justice policies as the time is more pressing. And we are getting closer to 2030, the deadline of GHG reduction target. And there are also more options in terms of green policies and development. So in Indonesia, awareness over climate change and its impact are also increasing. 79% based on the research of Gen Z say that climate change is a serious issue that Indonesia is facing today. So we need a youth campaign to support sustainable tourism and climate action. So that's kind of backgrounds that we use for our initial research while we're doing the research with the ministry. And after we doing some desk research, interview, and also with the counterpart, so we publish a responsible tourism campaign. We said in Indonesia, kita mulai sekarang, or start doing right now in English. But we have also already for international tourist version, we can say every step matters, because we have a different level of awareness between domestic and also international. So the logos we use combine several colors, such as mangrove leaves, and then blue sky as a representative of clean air and a footprint. And within the campaign, also we utilize the three values, campaign values. We try to combine three values: fashion, style, and then eco lifestyle, and ultimately how we can implement the frugal living or minimalism to support the circular economy as a lifestyle. So we can be responsible travelers, yet a cool young person who make a positive impacts to the environment. For example, by using a well-designed tumbler, reusable bag, and support circular economy by using recycled purse and buy local cool thrifting clothes. So we try to advocate or urge young people. They can do better for environment, and also they can be cool as a change agent. So this is one of the videos that influencer using the Kita Mulai Sekarang slogan. Oh, sorry. All the videos. I can give the link for the videos. Fortunately, this can be played. So the content of the campaign, because we start from small things. There are four major programs during the campaign. The first one, how we can urge the tourists to reduce single-use plastic, use tumbler, use shopping bag, and then bring your own cutlery while they're traveling. And also we try to advocate how to become more responsible while visiting, for example, natural destination, by being more responsible, minimize your waste, and also use sustainable products. And then also we encourage tourists to use the public transport and then short-haul travel, and utilize low or zero carbon transport such as bicycling. And this is part of how we can reduce the pollution from our movement while traveling. And the final one, also this is conjunction with other program from the ministry regarding the carbon offset calculator. We also just had a launch, the launch for the carbon calculator. So at the end, even though the carbon offset is not the solution, but the main solution is how we can decarbonize our activities, our businesses. But carbon offsetting is, not only the main solutions, but that's the final solution if we cannot reduce or unavoidable carbon emission. So this is our recommendation actually to the stakeholders and to the government, how we can elevate the campaign, and then tap the target market, targeting the young generation such as Gen Z and also the millennials. One of our recommendation is to bring the user-generated content. Yeah, for example, like in New Zealand, like hello mornings, generated content, small things or small effort through the video competition. And also there is a zero emission challenge. The people to use the efforts like a bicycle or use the public transportation to reduce the emission, and then post it to the social media. And this is the activity that we are planning maybe this year. We try to conduct an events, green festival events, which is use the green event guideline. Like we urge the people or audience to use Tumblr, and then also how we can manage the waste from the events by collaborate with a waste management company like such as Waste for Change or like that. So this is also can be done by any private sectors like hotels, and then like tourism attraction. For example, with ecosystem hotels and villa. They use one booking, one tree. So every booking by the guests and the company will dedicate a tree to plan based on the booking. And after the guests book, they will receive a certificate of planting tree, send it by the company. And then we have a great example from Sixth Sense as well. And this is quite unique because they said learning sustainability can be fun because they try to combine between education and also the sustainability itself. So they have several resorts. Depending on the resorts, they might encompass marine conservation, forestry, or farming initiatives, or supporting local schools and community projects. So they have a art lab, displays each resource consumption data, including water, energy, and waste. So this is also involve young child to learn about sustainability in different way, and can be fun. And in terms of the culture, we have Samsara Living Museum. This is located in the north side in Bali, right? Northeast side in Bali. And they use the local wisdom and then local values, as Julie said, that this is must to be integrated with the local values, because in Bali, we have a Trihita Karana, which is foundation also from the sustainable tourism concept. And they use local traditions and local knowledge to educate the guests to be more culture conscious while they are traveling. Okay, so sorry, it's a little bit. Yeah. So overall, or as summarize, that we try to urge people that sustainable tourism is not emphasize on the big steps that's maybe take high investment or high efforts, but we can start from the small things. Sometimes small steps get us further along. So by using, for example, water bottle to reduce the one single-use plastic, and then tote bag, and etc. So this is can be the peak, or can be illustrated that we can start from small things. And that's right, maybe from me, and just for information that we are the official training partner from Global Sustainable Tourism Council, or GSTC. We have another class in Yogyakarta in May, so we can learn about criteria and indicator how we can implement the sustainable tourism in hotels and destination. So that's it. Thank you for joining us, and we'll back to Pak Reda. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ale, for your presentations and also for your insights regarding Kita Mulai Sekarang, the Indonesia Responsible Tourism Campaign. I thank you for all the speakers, Dr. Julia and Mr. Ale, for your presentations. If I may summarize on both of their presentations, the overarching theme is caring for the destination. So I think there is this existential or principled need to protect the environment, to protect the resources that the destination have. And the question for us, either be a faculty, academic, or whoever is the destination stakeholder, is how can we contribute in terms of preserving these destination resources, as well as the earth in which we are living. So this campaign is a sort of answer to an existential question, an existential threat that comes also from climate change and also from over-tourism and other negative aspects of tourism. So I'm very interested to see questions from the audience. We have about 15 minutes Q&A questions. You may post your questions in chat, but if you wish to ask directly to the speaker, please raise your hand so we can arrange accordingly. So we have first question. It's from Pak Iwan. The question is how to implement sustainable pledge and getting high awareness effectively among tourists. Do you think high fines and penalties work for bad tourist behavior or better use rewards? I think it's questions for both of you. So if you maybe we'll start with Julia, Dr. Julia, for this question.
All right, thank you very much for this question. I think it's two very separate issues here that are being raised. So how do we get high awareness? I think we need to acknowledge that we're dealing with a very complex system of stakeholders. And our visitors are exposed to a complex system of stakeholders as well. So it's not only a case where we can communicate things once people are in the destination. We are effectively dealing with a situation where our visitors come into the destination with a preconceived set of perspectives as to what they can and can't do in this place. So I think in order to have an effective change in how a destination is perceived, we need to have alignment between our marketing material and the visitors coming into the destination. I'll give you an example from New Zealand where things don't go so well in this particular case. So we have a problem with what we call freedom camping, where people will rent those gigantic camper vans and drive into natural areas and park and empty the tank and leave their rubbish behind if things go really, really badly. Why do they think they can do this? They think this because the camper van companies in their marketing material have these pictures with a tiny camper van sitting all on its own in a huge landscape. Therefore, people rent a camper van and they think they can do exactly this. So I think alignment of what visitors are actually able to purchase in the destination and to do in the destination is really, really important. That's one thing. But it also illustrates the challenges in stakeholder collaboration that I have talked about before. And I think that's really, really important, that we've got alignment in messages and that we've got alignment in expectations and the expectations we create in visitors as well. In terms of the high fines or penalties versus rewards, oh gosh, I wish I had an answer to this. I mean, we see, for example, in Singapore, that the high penalties that are being imposed on people that, for example, leave chewing gum on the sidewalks or so, they have actually worked. There are these, instances of success to manage a very certain specific type of behavior. But does this mean we can have a system where we impose fines for every little infringement that can be part of a holiday? I don't think we can. So it's a very complex question, but we can't fine for everything. That's just not how tourism works. I think we need to be continuing our long journey to learn how to subtly influence behavior and have this combination of marketing, of nudging, of pledges, perhaps, of codes of conduct. And yes, it's hard and there's no quick fix, but I don't think fines or penalties will really fix anything sustainably.
Okay, thank you so much. And Pak Ali, do you have any opinions or a perspective on this?
Yeah, I agree with Julia that when we want to go to the place for leisure, for example, is it quite stressful if everywhere there's a penalty sign, right? And you cannot do this, you cannot do that, right? So I think that's the combination between like suggestion and also with the penalties, right? So the essential should be there's a penalty like a waste or something like that, but something that maybe cultural or ethically, they should be coming from themselves, right? For example, like in domestic tourists, it's quite more effective rather than fines by something, but peer pressure. It's quite more effective than fines. So I guess it's depend on the place or depend on the market, which one that we're gonna use for this approach. But combination is part of the important approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I think well, it's not necessarily Asian culture, but the idea is fine enforcement has always been embedded. I think in most countries, especially maybe for Indonesian, in terms of implementing control and order. So maybe that's the reason why there's been a lot. Also, recently Bali also has some issues with their foreigners, undesirably as well. And they are using loopholes also in the immigration system to kind of profit or benefit from it. So the second question, I think, also I have these questions. When we talk about values-led campaign, responsible tourism, and this comes from one of my faculty member, Penny, how do you implement a values-led campaign, especially in Indonesia, given that we have different host communities throughout archipelago and also have different cultures, and along with that, also embedded social values? Maybe I want to start with Mr. Ali first, who initiate the campaign Kita Mulai Sekarang. Mati ya? Hah? Oh, Pak Ali, you're in mute. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Ray. So yeah, it's quite difficult at the first times when we launch a campaign. So we have to socialize to the stakeholders before we put a market as a main target. So because we have a lots of different cultures or different way of life, and we have a archipelago, lots of islands there, and different languages. So one of the example is how we can translate the national campaign to and combine it with local values. That's the role of the interpretation. Can be one of the way that we can use. For example, in the airport, maybe instead of just we say only Kita Mulai Sekarang or every step matters, they also have the philosophy, which line and supported by the local values, because I just know that there's not only Balinese people, they have Trita Karana, but also in Sundanese people, they have also traditional which teach us about how we balance between the relationship between human to human and human to God and also human to environment, right? So that's maybe from my perspective, we can combine it, and interpretation is one of the way or tools that we can educate the domestic market. Still mute, Pak Reda.
And Dr. Julia, your perspective on this, given Indonesia's
I think it's
diverse
perfectly
culture?
valid. I mean, I can't comment on the Indonesia context specifically because that's not my expertise, sadly. But I will say that it's important to acknowledge differences between communities as well and to let those stand. We can't have a visitor behavior management approach rolled out in the exact same way across an entire country, especially as large, as densely populated, and a culturally diverse country as well. I think we do need to acknowledge the fact that different communities will want to deal with things differently as well. And there's got to be room for that too, because it comes back to livability of those communities, and sustainability may look differently depending on where those destination communities are, for example, in terms of how accessible they are, how easy it is to get to them. Is there an indigenous population that might have a different value system compared to other majority parts of the population? So I think we got to leave room for those different ways in which sustainability can emerge as well.
And
Okay.
also one thing, Pak Reda, that's why the interpretation is one of the important things. For example,
Mm.
I talked with a hotel business owner, and he said that we try to getting rid of the bottle plastic, one single-use bottle plastic in the room, right? And after 2 months, and there's lots of complaining from the domestic market, because why we should do, I mean, they try to provide glass, and then they have to fulfill the water in the dispenser, like walk like
In the
not
hallway. Yeah. Yes.
they're still complaining. Maybe the fault of the owners is not to put interpretation or story why we should do this, right? Just only
Mm.
provide glass, and the guests should refill the glass with the dispenser, and sometimes outreach of the room. So I guess the storytelling and also how we can communicate with guests is also important.
That's really good questions. That lead me to another questions, Dr. Julia, because as you're doing your research in terms of understanding the meaning of these pledges to the stakeholders, uh, what do you see as a structure to it? Is it begin first with the destination identifying what it needs to protect, or you know what I mean? Or is it more in
Yeah.
terms of, yeah, we have to be more sustainable because globally that's how it is. Which one is felt stronger? Because I felt like the Tiaki promise was very organic, and it does come from a community that has, you know, very good reasons why they want to protect their resources.
I think that's an excellent question, because when we talk about values-led social marketing initiative, the starting point has got to be an exploration of what these values actually are, because different communities, again, are likely to have different values. And a lot of the Tiaki Promise content is actually emerging from indigenous communities or indigenous community members who may have a very different understanding of sustainability and would like to see sustainability practiced differently, for example, compared to, the New Zealand Hilton Hotel strategy for sustainability. Those two might not necessarily match. Or thinking about the air sustainability strategy of corporate giants like Air New Zealand or so. And yet we had those two different perspectives, among additional perspectives, at the same table, thinking about what are those values that underpin the Tiaki Promise.
Oh, okay.
And of course, it's a challenging process. And of course, again, there's got to be room for doing things slightly differently, depending on which community or which governance level we look at. But it's important to have these conversations and see what sticks and see what emerges. For example, one of the things that did come through is that in any information that international visitors get on Air New Zealand planes, there's a much stronger presence of indigenous content than there would have been 3, 4, 5 years ago. So we do see tangible change as a result of those conversations, but it's still comparatively early stages, and we don't yet know where this is going to lead. But I don't think that it's a standard situation to have our indigenous representatives and the national airline and the large corporate players in tourism hospitality to even talking to each other on a regular basis. So this is, I think, at this point, a success in itself and will hopefully lead to better understanding of what these values are, because that is the first step. What are our values? And if there is disagreement initially of various stakeholders of what they are, then I would argue it's important to have these conversations as early as possible, because if those differences emerge later in the process, then a lot of time, money, resources, and opportunity might have been wasted. So in order to answer your question, I think the first step would need to be to identify how much agreement there can be on those values and how to find that agreement.
I see. Okay, that's very interesting. So I think the idea to have common agreement on those values and principal values is very important. I want to hear from the audiences. Maybe there are some questions from the audiences. If you have a questions directed to Mr. Ale or Dr. Julia Albrecht, please raise your hand. You can do it in Zoom.
May I make a comment then for Mr.
Yes.
Nalendra? Mr. Nalendra, I really enjoyed your point about learning sustainability can be fun. Together with a colleague, we've recently completed a project where we tried to involve children in destination management and destination planning. And we were really surprised at the well thought out input that we have had. And those were primary school children, sort of 9 to 11 years old. And they were amazing. They live in a destination. So Dunedin, where our universities is a tourism destination as well. And through their own interactions with visitors, they had such deep thoughts about it all. So I was really happy to see that you include children in your considerations as well. It was fantastic.
Yeah, because lots of people when learning about sustainability, it's it's too difficult, like difficult words or sophisticated words. But we can start from the children, and by providing like enjoyment or playful activities while they're staying, right? And this is part of interpretation that can match with their language or with their awareness. Yeah.
Okay. So do you have any questions from the audience? Don't be shy. Please feel free to speak your mind, or you have questions, please raise your hands as well. Okay, I have Miss Dewi from UPI. Your voice is on mute.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you for the speakers today that was presenting that the topics that very related what we need in the industry today. So I just want to share that I agree that to develop this tourism activity more sustainable need collaboration and need patience more in the destination. In like the doctor say that it depends on the community and also in the destination. I just want to share experience that I am conducting the wellness tourism and also gastrotourism in many region in Indonesia that is need more the important key that we have to gain trust in the community, that if we are tour operator, because I have a tour travel also beside I'm academics, I have a tour travel that we have to gain the trust from the community to develop that our activity bringing the tourists come to the destination. It will bring the welfare and also will not destroy the tourism destination especially in tourism village, and also many destination that was very need to be maintained the what we call it, the potential. It must be preserve the destination. So that is I agree that it is need trust. We need to know the community. We need to make a collaboration. That is the success factor that we can develop the tourism destination more sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Dewi. Thank you for your efforts bringing gastrotourism and making them well known more to visitors to these destinations. Okay. Any other questions from audiences? Thank you for Ibu Dewi comments. Also, there's a questions about fairness in terms of economic benefits. I think Dr. Julia talks about small places but high visitors, right? So how do destinations now compensate for those activities? You know, for example, in Alaska, when they have oil drilling, now they have guaranteed income. But how do you see destination like Iceland, who was bombarded with cruises as well as over tourism from America, as well as other parts of the country, deal with the high receipt of net tourism tax dollars, but also on the other hand, compensating for all the loss of resources?
Oh, I wonder what my response would be like if it hadn't been for the pandemic.
Okay.
Because obviously that changed everything, and we lost a fair proportion of tourism businesses worldwide, and supply and demand sort of adjusted themselves in a way because of this hiatus in tourism and nearly complete lack of visitation for quite a long time. So depending on what destinations we look at, we may have lost somewhere between 10% and half of the tourism businesses. So to an extent, the pandemic has balanced out some of this. And it's no coincidence, really, that a lot of destinations have really only seriously started to implement sustainability initiatives after the pandemic, when they thought they could almost reboot in safe mode. But the further we move on from the pandemic, we also see that the number of destinations following through with this successfully is getting smaller and smaller. Because it is quite tempting to increase capacity on airplanes, capacity in hotels,
Yes.
and so on. So I think we will very, very quickly in many destinations find ourselves at a situation again where it is almost like the pandemic, if not worse. So that point about fairness that has been made in the chat is really quite interesting, because what we are ultimately talking about is economic leakage from destinations.
Yes.
So I think that a better focus on supporting small and medium-sized businesses and destinations may really, really help with that. To have perhaps a cap or a limit on the extent to which we actually want international franchises in our destinations. We could just see what happens if we said no to them and instead supported small and medium-sized businesses to offer those same types of services and products. Why should we be dependent on international hotel franchises, especially if we're looking at smaller or emerging destinations? There's no good reason to continue relying on them. And in a similar vein, and we've been talking with destinations in Austria about this recently, as we move back and do tourism slightly differently, why do we even offer products, experiences, and services that we think of as unsustainable or bad for the community? Why not just try at the destination management level and cut those out of our offerings? So that if we especially look at small-scale destinations, focus on only desirable tourism products. I think this is definitely worth a try. We've been talking about this to destinations in Austria who see ways in which to move on from winter tourism, because as a result of climate change, there's obviously less and less snow. So we started talking about how this can be supplemented in the summer months, but not in a way that will again destroy the character of their villages. And these are one of the things we thought about, and really strengthening small and medium-sized locally owned businesses is one way of moving forward, and training and encouraging those to only offer things that are good for the community ultimately. So local foods, for example, no imported things.
Oh, I see. Yes, to improve the local economy.
As
I think
much
it will
as
be interesting
possible.
perspective. Pak Ale, from your field experience, as well as from other countries in Southeast Asia you have visited, what is your perspective on the economic fairness aspect? Oh, you're still on mute. Yes.
So it's the same question, right?
Yes, it's the same question. Yes.
So yeah, the fairness, right? Yeah, because you know, after the pandemics, lots of destinations now rethinking about their approach, right? Now, like you know, in the regions, that's not only visitation number that they try to aim, but how actually the tourism itself can benefit to all the local community. It's not like Julia says that about the economic leakage, right? Because now some of the destinations now aware regarding the invisible burden. So when we target mass tourism, right, there is a expense or cost. They don't note on their financial, you know, report. For example, the destroy or destruction because of the visitation itself, like environmental, they usually not put in the financial account. So yeah, we need to better approach on the tourism itself. So many countries try to, you know, revisit their policy and then to see how the tourism approach they're the best for their place. So I think yeah, after pandemic we should rethinking our tourism. Yeah.
Yes, I think it goes back also to Michelle Holiday, I think in Julia's presentation, to say that the primary driver of tourism should be the well-being of the community. And I think there's a good quote saying, why would you do it otherwise? So I thought it was really in line with it in terms of preventing economic leakages and making sure that the local community truly enjoy those benefits for themselves, as well as to making sure it's more sustainable. I think that question ends our seminar today. Thank you all for attending our tourism talk. This is something we did regularly or yearly usually during breaks during the semesters, but hopefully we'll have more tourism talk series going forward, and we'll invite more insightful speakers such as Dr. Joy Albert from University of Otago or Mr. Nalendra from Wise Steps to discuss contemporary issues about tourism, hospitality business, as well as events. Thank you for attending this tourism talk, and please fill in the Google form regarding the materials for presentations. We will discuss it with the key speakers, whether it can be designated or not. But thank you so much for attending tourism talks. Salam sejahtera and goodbye and terima kasih.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Goodbye.
you say kia ora at the end, or how do you say goodbye in New Zealand?
Yeah, kia ora works for both hello and goodbye.
Okay, okay, kia ora, Julia Aldrich.
Kia ora. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.